suddenly realized that with a mobile communication system, you have people speaking that are isolated. So even though there's a pause between sentences or while you're listening to the other person or even between syllables, you can't give up your channel very easily because you can't get it back quickly if you're using TDMA or FDMA. The industry had already looked at TDMA, FDMA, CDMA. Everybody had dropped CDMA, too many problems that were unsolved. And so there was a battle between TDMA and FDMA. We, the previous October, started looking at CDMA.
The breakthrough came about as one of our engineers, Klein Gilhausen, made a comment, heck, if you can fight noise so effectively, why don't we go for the cellular systems that were just going digital?
So Klein went off and thought about it and came up with a number of additional reasons why CDMA would be great.
With the coding system, we gained probably 6 dB, which is a factor of 4 in signal-to-noise improvement. That is, we could operate at 6 dB or 1/4 of the power received in an equal amount of noise. That was fairly significant. That's where CDMA came in, because we used the same techniques, generally speaking, to combat the local interference among users. You'd have a cell. In that cell, you'd apportion the spectrum. The neighboring cells would still be interfering, so you treat it as noise, because CDMA is just a form of spread spectrum, of taking the spectrum that your signal is in and spreading it out over a wider range of frequencies. That makes it look like noise, like background noise.
CDMA has the ability to be anti-jam. In fact, that's why the military likes code division or frequency hopping. It had the ability, even though there was overlap, a slight overlap between beams, to be able to live with that and therefore reuse the same frequency in all those beams, which gave you a more efficient system.
One team was led by Southwestern Bell, and they hated us. They hated our system, and they did everything they could to torpedo it.
And so the voting, which took place in January of '89, went in favor of TDMA. I think both Bell Labs, which had come up with the idea of cellular, that's where all the initial work was done, and I think Motorola were both in favor of FDMA, but TDMA won, so they switched over to TDMA. Every company we were working with had a reason why CDMA would not work. Let's design an experiment between us and then implement it and see if CDMA still works. And so we did that with a whole range of different problems, and CDMA kept working. That convinced a number of companies that CDMA was worth pursuing. Why? Because you could get, TDMA gave maybe a 3-to-1 improvement in the number of users per megahertz per antenna. CDMA, because of all the various advantages, could get you what we claimed at that time was 10 to 20 times the improvement. At that point, we did get companies to support us. In about '91, we had started to work in South Korea.
We never would have made it if it hadn't been for Korea. The government of South Korea actually raised the question in Parliament as to whether to go digital with CDMA or to go digital with GSM, which was the European system. And they made the right decision.
The first system in roughly October, November of '95 was Hong Kong. In January of '96, the next system to go, CDMA, was the main carrier in South Korea. A few months later, the second system to go, CDMA, was the other carrier in South Korea. And then finally, it came to the US.
And the other team that supported us was originally Pacific Bell, I think. And it went through phases, but ultimately became Verizon. But ultimately, as the Korean system blossomed into the tens of millions, Verizon picked up some of the East Coast carriers, Bell Atlantic, I think, and a few others.
So after CDMA became country by country, China, India, South America, Brazil, everyone has a different story.
1G was analog and went back to the 80s. 2G was the 90s, and it did accommodate CDMA, but as a junior partner. And by the year 2000, we actually cracked the European market, which was very hard to pull away from GSM.
So the whole industry went 3G with CDMA, grew a lot, but it wasn't until 2007 when our friends came out with their iPhone and got a user interface that was user-friendly, and that made all the difference in the world.